Jim, I've heard you say, I'm not a Christian because it works for me. I'm a Christian because it's true. How important is this evidence in truth when we're sharing our faith in a hostile culture like we live in America today?
If I wanted to look for an example of how Christians proclaimed the truth about Jesus in a culture that was growingly, or really even began to be very, very hostile toward Christianity, I think we do have an example of that in Scripture. I think that's what's happening in the book of Acts. You're in a cultural environment that rejects this claim, that for the most part is aligned against it. It's far worse than the culture we're in today. So if you're looking for an example of this, it's not as though there weren't great philosophers and thinkers in the Roman culture that the first disciples were working in. There were some really fine thinkers, poets, authors. But the apostles had a very distinct form of evangelism. And here's what it was. It wasn't, do you ever lie? Well, then you're a liar. Do you ever steal? Well, then you're a thief. It was not that kind of an approach. It wasn't kind of 4 steps to, it was always the same approach over and over and over again. The approach was, hey, the Old Testament prophesied about this resurrection, and we saw it with our own eyes. So every effort to communicate the gospel begins and ends in the book of Acts with, we were eyewitnesses of the resurrection. Look through all those examples. You're going to see that's it from Pentecost and Peter all the way through. It's over and over again. We saw the risen Christ. As a matter of fact, if you want to be part of the 12 in Acts 1, when they're up in the upper room trying to select a replacement for Judas, you had to be the guy, somebody who had seen Jesus from the baptism to the resurrection. So what they're looking for are eyewitnesses. Isn't that interesting? So it's a very evidential approach, using direct evidence, eyewitness testimony, as the foundation for sharing the gospel. So that's what's really interesting to me. I think what we have to be able to argue for our culture is, do we believe the resurrection occurred? And do we have good reason to believe? Now, they would have said, yeah, we have good reason to believe because we saw it. But we can say we have good reason to believe this because I'll walk through it for you and I'll show you that. But the problem, of course, is if you ask most people in our church culture, hey, can you give me some reasons why the resurrection is a reliable, why should I even believe in such a thing? We find ourselves not really with robust answers. So I think we really have to start having better answers to why we believe the resurrection is true.